Hey guys, Scarra here. Talk to you a little bit about Veigar middle. So originally Veigar middle came out as the idea that I wanted something that scaled really well late game to work around Diana. And the main reasoning is because I think that Diana is really hard to deal with, especially with TP, but the biggest thing is that you kind of get a free lane. Like she shoves infinitely into your turret and then she causes pressure like from 6. But if you are a champion that can outscale her or scale really well comparatively, I feel like I wanted to explore some options along the line. And I thought that Veigar was a champion where, Diana has no gap closer. She can't really punish his really weak early game. So I thought that with Veigar, a champion that scales really well after 2 items, he might be able to have some sort of value in this kind of matchup. So initially while playing Veigar, I kind of realized that since it's kind of impossible to land your EQ combo or EW combo because they kind of have to walk into your wall, it's not guaranteed. What you do a lot of the early game is you just farm. And you farm, you pick up Grail, you pick up or Morellos, and then you just, what the biggest thing is you don't need AP items. So if you need a rune for MR, a rune for CDR, a rune for move speed, which is what I've done recently, because you get so much AP off your Q. I average typically 100 plus AP off my Q, and long games 200 plus AP is really straightforward. So I think that the champion is really good past 2 items. It's just getting there is really hard because your lane phase sucks. So what ends up happening is I also take TP on Veigar. This allows me to counteract mid lane roams. And since I come in with an AoE stun, I tend to be able to effectively turn skirmishes and teamfights pretty well. Maybe not as well as something with like a point and click stun, like a TF ulti, but something that I'm really disruptive when I come out of the TP, which is something that is exactly what you want because you want to be able to be impactful off of TP. So not only am I able to kind of farm mid lane for a long time, the biggest problem with that is typically champions that are able to poke you out. So like Victor and Azir are really hard matches, but if you end up playing against these champions, you just have to settle for farming and then waiting until you get your core items, which would be, for me, was Grail Deathcap or Grail Void, Grail Zanya's, Grail Ludens. Ludens is super good because of the move speed. I feel like you can get a lot of good picks with your cage off that. And once you get your cage to rank 5 is typically when you kind of can control the pace of the game. You start grouping up, and the thing about Veigar's E is that he's equivalent to an ultimate on an 8-second to 11 to 10-second cooldown. And what I mean by this is that it's actually an insanely valuable CC ability, both in getting picks and in team fights and small skirmishes. It's just that the value doesn't really translate in a 1v1 scenario. So early game, not too great when you have only 1 point to it, but once you get 5 points and start skirmishing a lot, even though his weakness is that he's immobile, he brings this insane CC for the team, so it's really hard for their team to work around the utility that your cage brings. And on top of that, you do enough damage to where if you want, you can just burst any target in the game. You can flash an ulti to burst the AP caster or AD, or you can just try to kill frontline after a bunch of different Qs. Veigar works best against champions that want to dive into you, but you can still respond accordingly against poke champions late game because you have this ability to cage people. Now, of course, when you play Veigar, you have to work around the cleanse summoner because everyone will take cleanse against you. What this means is don't get too antsy when you hit them with a good cage early because they're probably going to cleanse that one, and then don't be frustrated because cleanse is a long cooldown. It's like a 3-minute cooldown. Like as soon as they use it one time, you can just go back within the next 3 minutes to catch them again, and it's really simple because before cleanse works really well against Ashe Arrow and like a CC like that, Lissandra ulti, but against Veigar cage, which the cooldown is so low, they're trading an extremely long cooldown for your extremely short cooldown. So you tend to come out ahead more times than not. But generally, I wouldn't play this champion against things that can dominate the lane really easily. So stuff like Zed and stuff like Victor are champions that are going to be very hard for you. But when you play into champions which just kind of let you farm, whether it be like Diana, for instance, which is the initial pick, or maybe a very passive Orianna player who doesn't really walk up and trade too much on you, as long as you're able to get this kind of constant AP building with your Q, you become typically kind of a monster late game. And not only are you a monster in terms of damage, you're also a monster in terms of CC and pick potential.